My name is Anna-Louise, and at 70 years old, my own grandson Leo stood in a room full of people we'd fed at our holiday parties for 2 decades and called me dead weight. And they all laughed. Not a big, bold laugh, mind you. It was that nervous, tittering kind from people who don't have the spine to stand up to the man holding the checkbook. But it was a laugh all the same, and it hit this old heart like a shard of ice. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? My husband, Arthur, the love of my life, the man I'd built Vance Innovations with from the ground up, had been gone for 4 months. A sudden stroke at 68. And in that vacuum of grief, our 35-year-old grandson, who I'd changed the diapers of, had decided the company throne was his for the taking. So when he said those words, time to cut the dead weight. Starting with Granny. I simply stood. I smoothed down the skirt of my favorite lavender suit, the one Arthur said made my eyes sparkle, picked up my pocketbook, and walked straight out of that boardroom. I walked past the reception desk where I'd interviewed the first secretary, past the elevator where Arthur and I had shared 1,000 rushed coffees, and straight to my sensible sedan. 3 hours later, I was on a plane to Nashville with nothing but my wallet, a carry-on bag, and a fury that could power every honky-tonk on Broadway. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that like button and subscribe. This granny has a story to tell. Let me rewind for you. Let me tell you how a 70-year-old woman ends up being publicly put out to pasture by her own flesh and blood. After Arthur died, the world went quiet and gray. We'd been a team for 45 years. Vance Innovations wasn't just a company. It was our third child. I handled the people, the client relationships, the heart of the operation. Arthur was the visionary, the big ideas man. We were a perfect balance. Leo had been working there for a decade, climbing the ladder. He was always ambitious, my Leo. I should have seen the signs in the weeks after the funeral. The way he'd start meetings without me. The patronizing pats on my shoulder. Don't you worry about the numbers, Granny. I've got it handled. He'd say it with that smile, the same one that used to charm me into giving him an extra cookie. I was drowning, you see. Drowning in a quiet house full of Arthur's things. His reading glasses still on the nightstand. His favorite sweater hanging on the back of his chair. So I let Leo's little power plays slide. I thought he was grieving too in his own way. I thought he was just trying to steady the ship. The morning of that board meeting, he'd asked me to come to a family and future discussion. I put on my lavender suit and the simple silver bracelet Arthur gave me on our 10th anniversary. I thought I was walking in as Anna-Louise, co-founder, a woman who still held a 35% stake in the company she helped birth. I was so wrong. The moment I entered, I felt it. The air was thick with discomfort. Our longtime lawyer, Frank Dobson, studied the wood grain of the table as if it held the secrets of the universe. Helen Porter, our head of finance, couldn't meet my eyes. Leo stood at the head, looking every inch the young titan in a suit that cost more than my first car. He gave a slick presentation full of words like synergy and streamlining and pivoting to a new paradigm. He talked about eliminating redundancies and sentimental attachments. For 20 minutes he danced around what he really wanted to say. Then a slide came up. Operational efficiency. Non-essential assets. My name was at the very top. And that's when he said it. Dead weight. The words hung in the air, ugly and final. The nervous chuckles from around the table were the nails in the coffin of my old life. The woman I was a year ago would have fought. She would have listed every client she'd saved, every crisis she'd averted, every midnight hour she'd worked to make Vance Innovations a name people trusted. But that woman was buried a little deeper with Arthur. The woman who stood up? She was someone new. I looked at my grandson, at the cold certainty in his eyes, and I felt something in me snap clean in two. Leo, I said, my voice steady as a rock. No tremor, just ice. I do hope this moment was worth it. And then I left. I didn't go home to pack my life into boxes. I went home with a singular purpose, to pack a new one. I had 4 hours until my flight. 4 hours to shed a lifetime. Walking into that big empty house was like walking into a museum dedicated to a woman I no longer recognized. The photos on the wall showed a woman who always stood slightly behind her husband, who smiled supportively. She asked for so little. I went straight to my bedroom and opened my closet. I looked at the rows of sensible suits, the muted colors, the uniform of a corporate wife and grandmother. I ran my hand over the fabric and felt nothing. Then I saw it tucked in the back. A vibrant, embroidered tunic I bought on a trip to Santa Fe with Arthur and never worn because Leo said it wasn't boardroom appropriate. I pulled it out. This, I thought. This is me. The me I put away to be appropriate. I filled one carry-on suitcase. A few of those forgotten, colorful tunics. Comfortable, well-made slacks. My good jewelry, including my wedding ring, which I placed on a chain around my neck. Not because I was clinging to the past, but because I was taking its strength with me into the future. Everything else was just stuff. Expensive, heavy stuff that had kept me small. Next I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Helen Porter. "Eleanor," she answered, her voice hushed. "My God, what happened?" "Helen, I need a favor." "No questions." A pause. "Anything." "The master client list and contact histories. I need a copy. My personal email." "Eleanor, you know the protocols." "Helen," I said, my voice dropping into a register I hadn't used in years. The register that used to make junior executives quake. "I held your hand through your divorce. I wrote your recommendation letter for your daughter's scholarship. I am not asking for company secrets. I am asking for a copy of the Rolodex I built." A longer pause. Then, "Give me the email address. You'll have it in 10 minutes. The second call was to my banker, Michael Yates. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his tone somber. "I heard about the meeting. Michael, I need to move all my personal holdings to a new institution today. And I want Leo removed from every single point of contact, every beneficiary form, everything." "Mrs. Vance, in your state of grief, perhaps?" "Michael," I interrupted. "The only thing grieving right now is my patience. Can you do it or not? Come in now. We'll have it done by closing." I did. I transferred every penny of my own money I'd earned long before Vance Innovations was a glimmer in Arthur's eye. Then I went to a department store and bought a new wardrobe. Flowing skirts, soft leather boots, blouses in colors like emerald and sapphire. The saleswoman, a lovely woman named Darlene with fabulous silver hair, smiled at me. "Starting fresh, honey?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, handing her my card. By 6 p.m. I was at the airport. My phone buzzed. Leo. Then again. Then the texts. "Granny, this is childish. Where are you? We need to talk about this. Come home. Helen told me what you did. Those files are company property." I read them, felt a twinge of that old guilt, and then I pictured his face in that boardroom. I turned the phone off. Permanently. The flight attendant, a sweet girl named Chloe, helped me with my bag. "First time in Nashville?" she asked cheerfully. "First time doing a lot of things, dear," I said. As the plane lifted off, Seattle shrinking into a toy city below me, I finally let myself cry. Not for Leo. Not for the company. But for Eleanor. For all the years she'd spent being what everyone else needed her to be. The tears didn't last long. They dried up somewhere over Colorado, replaced by a steely resolve. Nashville was a revelation. The air smelled of hot pavement and distant barbecue, not salt and drizzle. People moved slower, talked friendlier. I rented a small, modern apartment in the Gulch with a view of the city skyline. The real estate agent, a force of nature named Beatrice with big hair, and an even bigger smile, saw right through me. "Seattle, huh? Corporate type," she'd said, looking over my application. "We get a lot of folks like you here. People looking for their second act." "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Honey," she laughed. "At my age, you learn to spot someone who's just remembered they're the lead character in their own story." She wasn't wrong. The first thing I did was buy a good simple coffee maker. Not the complicated Italian machine Leo had insisted on for the office, but the kind Arthur and I had used at our kitchen table when Vance Innovations was just a name on a napkin. Sitting there with my coffee on my second morning, I opened my laptop. I wasn't just planning survival. I was planning a resurrection. I studied the client files Helen had sent. Vance Innovations had a specific niche. We took brilliant, chaotic inventors and helped them build actual, profitable businesses around their ideas. I scanned the list and a slow smile spread across my face. Over the last 7 years, nearly 70% of our most profitable, most successful long-term clients had been my personal projects. Leo knew how to present the solutions I designed, but he had no idea how to diagnose the problems in the first place. The irony was thicker than my morning grits. My phone rang. A Tennessee number. Anna-Louise, a man's voice said. This is Samuel Beckett from Beckett Amplifiers. Beatrice gave me your number. She said you might be the one to call when everything's on fire. Beatrice, you brilliant woman. What seems to be the problem, Samuel? I asked, my professional instincts snapping to life. He explained his company made the best boutique guitar amplifiers in the country, had just secured major funding, and was somehow losing money faster than a tourist loses money at a blackjack table. 2 days later, I was in his workshop, surrounded by gorgeous hand-tooled leather, and the smell of soldering irons, looking at accounting books that were a horror show. Brilliant craftsmen, passionate about their product, and a business model held together with duct tape and hope. I spent the day there asking questions, untangling their processes. It was the same story I'd seen 100 times. They were so focused on perfecting each amp, they hadn't calculated the true cost of their materials, their time, their scaling. They were losing money on every sale. Samuel, I said as we wrapped up, you need to implement a new cost accounting system, create a realistic production timeline that doesn't burn out your artisans, and for the love of all that is holy, hire a proper operations manager. He looked at me like I just revealed the meaning of life. How long would that take? 8 weeks to stop the bleeding. 6 months to make you profitable. Could you do it? He asked, hope blazing in his eyes. I took a quiet breath. My rate is $350 an hour, plus a percentage of the cost savings we identify in the first year. He stuck out his hand. When can you start? Walking out of that workshop, I felt a jolt of pure, unadulterated joy. I was Anna-Louise, problem solver. Not a grandmother, not a widow, not dead weight. I called Beatrice to thank her. How did you know? I asked. Darling, she chuckled. I've been 70 for 5 years. I know the look of a woman who's been told she's obsolete, and is just waiting for the right moment to prove everybody wrong. Success, I discovered, spreads in a town like Nashville faster than a good gossip. Samuel Beckett told his friends. I helped a small, family-owned distillery streamline their distribution. I assisted a tech startup focused on music rights management get their financial house in order. Within 6 months, Anna-Louise Consulting wasn't just a name on a lease. It was a sought-after commodity. I hired an assistant, a whip-smart Vanderbilt grad named Chloe who had more sense by 25 than Leo did at 35. I found a lovely little office in a converted townhouse. The work was fulfilling, the people were genuine, and for the first time since Arthur died, I felt truly, completely alive. It was Chloe who alerted me. Eleanor, there's a Leo Vance here to see you. He says he's your grandson. He's rather insistent. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Send him in, Chloe. He walked into my office a year and a half after that boardroom, but he looked a decade older. The expensive suit was still there, but it hung on him loosely. His eyes were shadowed with stress and what looked suspiciously like fear. Nice office, Granny, he said, trying for his old charm and missing by a mile. Hello, Leo. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? Can't a grandson visit his grandmother? A grandson can. But this grandson flew across the country without calling. So I'll ask again. What do you want? The mask slipped. We're having some issues at Vance Innovations. I waited. I had learned the power of silence. We've lost some key clients. Patterson Sound, Innovate Labs, Global Sonic. All my clients. All relationships I'd built over years. They're saying they want to work with you. There it was. What are you proposing, Leo? A partnership, he said, leaning forward. Vance Innovations and Anna-Louise Consulting. We merge resources. It's what Granddad would have wanted. We're family. Family, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. Leo, when I was grieving the man I loved for 45 years, did you support me? Or did you use my grief to push me out of the company I helped create? He had the decency to look ashamed. I was wrong. I was an idiot. But we're family and family forgives. I have forgiven you, I said calmly. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to forget, or that I have to rescue you from the consequences of your actions. He slumped. So you'll just let the company fail? No, Leo. I've already saved it. What? Anna-Louise Consulting now holds the contracts that are paying Vance Innovations bills. Your employees have jobs because my company is generating the revenue. You didn't want a partner, Leo. You want a lifeline. The meeting ended with him leaving defeated. But the story wasn't over. A week later, I got a call from an old friend in Seattle. Leo, in his desperation, had taken out a massive loan against the company, and due to some deliberately obscure paperwork he'd never finished removing me from, I was still legally a part owner. If the company failed, I would be personally liable for almost $1 million. He hadn't just wanted to humiliate me. He had tried to set a financial trap for me. The coldness in my heart turned to steel. I flew back to Seattle. I called a meeting of the entire company. I stood in front of the people I'd hired and told them the truth. Not with anger, but with devastating clarity. I told them about the boardroom, about the lies, about the loan. I watched the dawning horror on their faces. Then I looked at Leo. You have a choice. You can leave voluntarily, or I will assume majority control of this company, and you can stay on as an employee, learning the business you thought you could run from the ground up. He had no cards left to play. The following week, I was once again the CEO of Vance Innovations. The first thing I did was secure the loan with the new revenue from my consulting firm. The second thing I did was put Leo in charge of client relations, reporting directly to Chloe, my assistant from Nashville. It's been 6 months since I took back my company. The merged firms are thriving like never before. The old stifling corporate culture has been replaced with one of collaboration and respect. And Leo? He's finally learning. He's humbled, he's quiet, and for the first time in his life he's actually listening. He came to my office the other day. The real CEO's office, which I'd reclaimed and filled with plants and light. Granny. Eleanor. He corrected himself. I was wrong. About everything. I was scared. Scared I couldn't fill Granddad's shoes. Scared I couldn't be you. We all get scared, Leo, I said. But we don't all try to destroy our family to hide from it. Do you think you'll ever really forgive me? I looked at this boy man, my grandson, and I saw the child who used to fall asleep in my lap. I thought of the woman I had become in Nashville, the woman in the embroidered tunics who built an empire from a pocketbook and a righteous anger. Leo, I said, I forgave you the moment I realized your cruelty was the key that unlocked my cage. If you hadn't called me dead weight, I never would have learned I could fly. He cried then, real tears of shame and regret, and I let him. Now I sit in my office looking out at the Seattle skyline. I'm 70 years old. I run 2 successful companies. I have a fabulous apartment in Nashville and a renewed sense of purpose. The papers call it a remarkable comeback. But it wasn't a comeback. It was a rebirth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead. It's about proving that dead weight can be the very foundation you use to build something magnificent. So, to anyone out there who's been told they're too old, too irrelevant, too anything, remember this, Granny. Your story isn't over until you say it is. Now don't forget to subscribe. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Running the merged companies, now officially named Vance Legacy Group, from 2 cities was a logistical ballet, but one I found strangely invigorating. My weeks were split. 10 days in Seattle untangling the final knots Leo had created, and the rest in Nashville, growing my consulting firm and breathing the free music-filled air. I installed Leo in his old office but with the new title, Junior Account Manager. His first assignment was to personally call every client he'd driven away, and offer a sincere apology, with no promise of renewed business. I sat in on the first few calls. It was brutal, necessary medicine. Mr. Patterson, Leo began, his voice tight. This is Leo Vance. I'm calling to apologize for my handling of your account. My decisions were unprofessional. He listened, his face flushing a deep red. Yes, sir. I understand. No, my grandmother is now back in charge. Yes, Anna-Louise. He hung up and looked at me, utterly defeated. He said he wouldn't piss on me if I were on fire, but for you he'd consider a meeting. Progress, I said, taking a sip of my tea. See? Humility is a skill. You have to practice. I paired him with my most no-nonsense project manager from the Nashville office, a woman in her 50s named Brenda, who had zero tolerance for corporate nonsense. Brenda reported his progress directly to me. He's like a puppy that's been kicked, she told me over the phone one evening. All the confidence is beaten out of him. Now we can just maybe build something real. That was the goal. Not to break him but to rebuild him. To sand down the arrogant varnish his father, my son, who had always been more interested in the prestige of the company than the work, had applied, and see if there was solid wood underneath. Meanwhile, the Vance Legacy Group was flourishing. The Anna-Louise method, as the press had started calling it, a blend of deep empathy, ruthless financial clarity, and systematic process building, was working miracles. We were the go-to firm for established companies feeling stagnant and startups on the verge of burning out. My age, once a perceived liability, became our secret weapon. Clients saw my silver hair and heard my calm, steady voice, and they trusted me. I wasn't a fly-by-night consultant. I was the granny who was going to fix their mess. About 3 months into the new arrangement, I found Leo in the office kitchen on a Saturday morning, staring blankly at the coffee machine. Having trouble, dear? I asked. He jumped. Granny, I didn't know you were here. I just can't get it to work like you do. It was the same machine I'd had for years. I showed him the simple steps. As the rich aroma filled the room, he spoke without looking at me. How did you and Granddad do it? How did you know how to fix things? I look at a company's books and I see numbers. You look at them and you see a story. This was the first real question he'd asked me in years. The first sign of genuine curiosity. We listened, Leo, I said, pouring us both a cup. Your grandfather listened to the ideas, the dreams. I listened to the people, the fears of the CEO, the frustrations of the warehouse manager, the quiet genius of the shy engineer. The numbers are just the symptoms. The people are the diagnosis. He was quiet for a long moment. No one ever taught me that. I tried, I said softly. You were always too busy telling us what you already knew to learn what you didn't. He nodded, absorbing the blow without argument. It was another small crack in his armor. I decided it was time for the final examination. I brought Leo to Nashville for a week to shadow me with my newest clients. I wanted him to see the Anna-Louise method in its natural habitat, far from the shadow of his grandfather's legacy. We were working with Belmead Botanics, a high-end skincare company run by 2 fierce sisters in their 60s. They were brilliant chemists but struggling with a supply chain that was more tangled than a ball of yarn after a cat's playdate. Leo sat silently in the meeting as I talked to the sisters, Clara and Rose. I didn't just look at their spreadsheets. I asked about their childhood, about how they started making lotions at their kitchen table, about their vision for the brand. Leo watched, fascinated, as this personal history directly informed my business recommendations. I connected their need for reliable lavender to a local farmer I'd helped the previous year. After the meeting, Clara hugged me. Eleanor, you're a godsend. You see the heart of it. As we walked to the car, Leo was quiet. You didn't even talk about profit margins until the very end, he finally said. The profit, I explained, is the reward you get for building something of true value. If you focus only on the profit, you'll never build anything worth having. That night, over hot chicken that made his eyes water, he said, I get it now. What I was trying to do in Seattle. It was just moving pieces on a board. What you do here. You're building ecosystems. I smiled. My grandson had finally learned to see. Our peace was shattered a week after we returned to Seattle. I got a frantic call from Helen in finance. Eleanor, we have a problem. A big one. The problem was a man named Silas Thorne. He was the hard-nosed old moneylender from whom Leo had secured that disastrous $800,000 loan. With the company's renewed financial health, I had been making steady, aggressive payments. But Silas, it turned out, had never intended for us to pay it off. The loan was structured with Byzantine penalty clauses, and he claimed a minor administrative delay in one of our payments had triggered a default, allowing him to call in the entire remaining balance immediately. This was no accident. This was an ambush. He's been buying up small shares from disgruntled former board members, Helen whispered. Eleanor, I think he's making a play for the company. Leo was ashen when I told him. Thorne? He came to me after Dad's funeral. He was so supportive. He said I needed to be bold to make my mark. He's the one who encouraged me to take that loan. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My grandson hadn't been a master villain. He'd been a pawn. Silas Thorne had manipulated an arrogant, grieving young man into making a series of catastrophic decisions, all designed to weaken Vance Innovations enough for him to swoop in and seize it at a bargain price. My success had ruined his timeline, so he was forcing his hand. I called a war council in my office. Me, Leo, Brenda, who I'd flown up from Nashville, and Frank Dobson, our lawyer. We can fight him in court, Frank said. But it will be long, expensive, and the uncertainty could scare off our clients. We don't have the liquid cash to pay the full balance without crippling the company, Helen added, her voice tight with anxiety. Leo sat with his head in his hands. This is all my fault. I was so stupid. Stop it, I said, my voice sharp. Regret is a useless emotion right now. We need a plan. Silas thinks he's playing chess with a checkers player. He's about to find out he's playing against someone who invented the game. I looked at my team. At Brenda's tactical brilliance, at Frank's legal cunning, at Helen's financial precision, and at Leo, who now had fire in his eyes instead of fear. Here's what we're going to do, I said. Our plan was threefold. First, Frank would engage Silas in legal wrangling, buying us time and making him think we were on the ropes. Second, Brenda and I would work day and night to prepare Vance Legacy Group for a move so bold it would either save us or sink us. We would spin off the entire wildly profitable Nashville consulting arm as its own separate corporate entity. This would protect my life's work from Silas's grasp and create a powerful independent ally. Third, and this was Leo's idea, we would go on the offensive. He had kept meticulous notes from his early meetings with Silas, notes that heavily implied Silas's predatory intent. We wouldn't just defend ourselves. We would sue Silas Thorne for predatory lending and intentional interference in a business. The day we filed the countersuit, the Seattle business press had a field day. Granny Vance fights back, one headline read. I rather liked it. The showdown happened not in a courtroom, but in my boardroom. Silas Thorne, a man with the cold eyes of a raptor, sat across from me. Leo was at my right hand, Brenda at my left. Eleanor, Silas said, his voice like gravel. This is all very dramatic. But the fact remains you're in default. I can take this company today. No, Silas, I said calmly. You can't. I slid a stack of documents across the table. This is the finalized spin-off of Anna-Louise Consulting. It is a separate entity, with its own assets and clients. It is untouchable by you. His eyes narrowed. And this, I said, sliding another paper, is a cashier's check for the full remaining balance of the loan, plus every exorbitant penalty you dared to charge. The money came from a line of credit against my Nashville firm. He stared at the check, his plan crumbling. And this, Leo said, his voice strong and clear, is a copy of the lawsuit we filed this morning. We have records, Silas. Emails, notes. We can prove you targeted me when I was vulnerable. The court of public opinion, not to mention the actual court, is going to eat you alive. Silas Thorne looked from my steady gaze to Leo's determined one. He had bet on our family being weak and divided. He found us united and stronger than ever. He stood up, his face a mask of cold fury. This isn't over. Oh, I think it is, I said. Get out of my boardroom. A year later, the Vance Legacy Group was not just stable. It was a powerhouse, renowned for its resilience and integrity. The lawsuit against Silas Thorne was settled quietly but favorably, with him signing a full confession of non-interference. The story became a legend in business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating a 70-something woman and the grandson she redeemed. Leo is now the Vice President of Client Relations, a title he earned. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a quiet confidence and a deep, genuine care for the people we work with. He still calls me Granny in private, but in meetings it's Eleanor or Ma'am. I wouldn't have it any other way. I split my time evenly now between Seattle and Nashville. In Nashville, I'm Miss Eleanor, the sharp-dressing consultant who knows everyone and can solve anything. I have friends there: Beatrice, Darlene from the department store, the sisters from Bellmead Botanics. We go to hear live music and talk about things that have nothing to do with business. Today, I'm sitting in my Nashville office, looking at a framed photo on my desk. It's a picture of Arthur and me, young and hopeful, standing in front of our first tiny office. I touch my wedding ring, still on its chain around my neck. I did it, Arthur, I whisper. I saved our company. But more than that, I saved our grandson. There's a knock on the door. It's Leo holding 2 plane tickets. Ready to go, Granny? Our flight to Seattle boards in 2 hours. We have that big merger meeting tomorrow. I smile, grabbing my pocketbook, a beautiful embroidered bag I bought here in Nashville. I'm ready. As we walk out together, I think about my story. It's a story about betrayal, yes, but it's really a story about redemption. It's about proving that it's never too late to start over, to fight back, to learn, and to forgive. Dead weight. The heaviest things in life are often the most valuable. They give you the anchor and the strength to stand firm in any storm. And this Granny's storm has finally passed, leaving behind a legacy brighter than anything I could have imagined. Thanks for watching, darlings. Don't forget to share your own stories of reinvention in the comments below. And always remember, no one gets to define your worth but you. Now hit that subscribe button. This channel isn't going to run itself.